understanding thyroid health overall. What if it's not really a thyroid problem? Like we talked, it could be a lot of other things. I don't know if there's anything related to that you wanted to touch on.
Well, I would just say that it's never really a thyroid problem.
It's everything, right?
The thyroid might be the thing that you discover, right? The thyroid might be the thing that you discover. But that doesn't mean that it's a thyroid problem. And I think you did something really like important earlier. You made a comment, Dr. Ami, of like, we were talking about thyroid problems, and symptoms. You're like, oh, well, that sounds a lot like PCOS, right? And I think this is where it's like, oh, we found something, we're going to diagnose it, versus asking the curious question of, why is that happening? Because a thyroid, the body wants to be in balance. So it's actually never a thyroid problem.
Welcome back to the Holistic Hormones Podcast with me, Dr. Ami Patel, pharmacist and hormone consultant. I've transformed my pain, struggle, and journey with managing my PCOS into my passion to support women to gain freedom from their hormone imbalance symptoms. On this podcast, I share practical tips that have worked for me and my clients, as well as conversations from experts in their field.
Today is a guest episode, and I'm joined here today with Jenn Malecha. Thank you for being here, Jenn.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Ami. I'm excited to share some hopefully very useful and helpful information for people out there.
Yes, definitely. So thyroid is the topic we're going to talk about today, which we haven't covered yet on my channel. So I'm really excited to get your expertise on that. And before we get into it, I just wanted to do a brief introduction of Jenn. Jenn supports busy, health-minded professionals in taking back control of their health by giving them access to the right lab tests and resources so they can find the missing pieces of their health puzzle and actually fix what is wrong and get back to feeling like themselves again. Using over a decade of personal training experience, training in functional diagnostic nutrition, transformational coaching, and a bachelor's of science in kinesiology, Jenn creates personalized health rebuilding programs for clients that are realistic and sustainable for long-lasting results that empowers her clients to be the boss of their own health. Amazing work that you're doing. So thank you again for being here.
Yes.
And I really align with your vision and mission, which is, of course, why we connected, like giving people the tools they need, empowering them to understand their own health and be their own advocate, and building a lifestyle that's sustainable, right? Like there's no point in trying to do something for 30 to 90 days if after that you're going to just go back to where you were.
Exactly. It's like, I love to always reference the definition of insanity. It is doing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So if we want to experience something different in our body, feel a different way, then that means we have to try new things. We have to learn how to navigate life differently and cultivate a lifestyle that's going to support the way that we actually want to be feeling, right?
Yes, definitely. And I'm sure there is a reason to why you got into this space. So could you please tell us a little bit about your health journey related to your thyroid journey as well, and just why you do what you do now?
Yeah. Well, I think that, health in itself is a journey, right? It presents so many opportunities for us to reflect and continuously ask ourselves, how do we want to be feeling through this thing of life that we get to experience? And this all really came to a head for me a bit when I was in my 20s. I was actually diagnosed with skin cancer at 25. And at that time, as you were kind of saying my bio, I had pursued a degree in kinesiology. I studied fitness, nutrition, and health. And I was, quote unquote, the healthiest person that I knew, right? I was working in the fitness industry. I was doing all the right things. I was exercising, eating according to what the definition of healthy eating was back then, which I know is so much different now. And it just didn't make sense. My doctor had no explanations to offer me. There was no family history. I was not an obsessive, tanner by any means. I mean, I do live in San Diego where there's a lot of sun, but that wasn't like I was just frying my skin out in the sun.
Yeah.
And along with that, I had also started to notice just like a list of health issues that were growing. Like I started to develop seasonal allergies that were becoming every season, like progressively more severe, to the point where they would wind up becoming an ear infection and they would wipe me out for days at a time. I experiencing migraines from time to time. I also, even though I was an avid fitness enthusiast, I had joint aches and pains that would not go away. And I, at the time, just kind of brushed it off like, oh, I'm a runner. It's normal to have hip pain or knee pain or any of these things. And even to the point, Dr. Ami, where I one day, I'm going to date myself, how old this is. Like, this was before we had electronic, like, scheduling systems. And when I worked in the fitness industry, we had a master paper schedule. Because I was the manager, it was my job at the beginning of the month to sit down and write out everybody's schedule with a Sharpie marker. And I was doing that one day, and 30 minutes into doing that, I got so nauseous and sick, I had to go home. And I know now that that's a chemical sensitivity and a clue in my body, right? So fast forward, what happened is I went searching for answers. I started to question everything I had known about health and what I had learned in school. And I found the functional health industry. And I found a specific program called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, founded by Ray Davis, who started talking about the actual physiology of the body, like how the hormone, immune, detox, energy, nervous system are all connected, and the different lab tests that you could do to look at these different systems of the body and see how they're all working or not working together. And I dove right into that training program. And part of that experience, you do some of the lab tests on yourself, and those lab tests revealed all the answers about why I had been diagnosed with cancer. So I had super high oxidative stress, which is cellular DNA damage. I had a very congested liver and detox system. I had all kinds of bacterial overgrowth, including H. pylori going on in my gut, which is highly correlated with migraines, by the way. And I also had all different types of hormone imbalances. So it was like the perfect environment for cancer to cultivate, right? So luckily with that data, I was able to make changes to my lifestyle, change my diet, the way I was sleeping, the way I was exercising, brought in specific supplements, worked on reducing stress in my life and my environment, eliminating toxins, and got to a really, really good, optimal, healthy place. Wow. And the journey is not over because we live life. This is where the thyroid connection comes in. Going along, feeling great, and started working from home. And over the course of 2 years, slowly put on 15 pounds, no matter what I was doing. Here I was at this higher level of doing all the right things. And no matter what I was doing, I was still putting on weight, started to break out with cystic acne, had breakthrough periods, and like searching and trying to figure out what was happening. And one day found that we had mold in our house. And that led me to then dive deeper into testing, revealed thyroid imbalances, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, estrogen dominance, clogged detox capacity again, and went through a whole journey to heal that. And here I am back to myself. Fingers crossed, but life still happens, right? We never know when, there's going to be a water leak in a home or something like that. We just are doing the best that we can at any point in time. But I'm happy to say that here with you today in this moment at the age of 41, I feel more energetic, more comfortable in my body than I have ever felt in my entire life. And that's on the brink of perimenopause. So it is possible not only to reclaim your body, but also feel better than ever before. Make some lifestyle changes and know what to do, essentially.
No, that's so amazing, like how you transformed your journey and health twice, not once, but twice. And it is interesting because it's like, we're made to believe that 20s and 30s is like our optimal health, which it's supposed to be, right? But it's like you were saying, you thought like you were doing the right stuff, but then, all these other factors that impacted your health. And speaking of Reed Davis, he was actually on my channel. So I'm going to link that for people in the description. We did talk more in depth about functional testing. So if anybody wants to learn more in depth about that, I'll link that in the description and on the video so people can refer to that. But yeah, pretty crazy. Small world there. So yeah, how, I guess it gets me thinking that why are we made to believe that, okay, just eat right, exercise, and everything is good, but then there's all these other factors that we don't know about. And I think one of the things that, we want to talk particularly about is thyroid issue. Why do you think so many women in particular are being diagnosed with thyroid issues, even though, you were saying, right, we think we're doing the right things?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because it is something that I see so common in my practice. And the thing that I came to realize, the mold was the precipice that helped me dive into the concept of thyroid. But I'll tell you, Dr. Me, there's thyroid. What I found through this process was there was a history of thyroid conditions in my family that was just never talked about on both sides of my family. So my grandmother's on both sides. My aunt has had her thyroid completely removed, ablated. And so it really begs the question is, why is this happening? And the reality is that our body wants to be in balance, right? And it wants to be in balance, but it needs the right things in order to be in balance. And so we want to look at, one, what does the body need in order for the thyroid to be in balance? And also, two, what are the things that are disrupting balance, right? And if we think about our modern day world, there is a lot of disruption, right? Environmental disruptions, interferences, artificial environments, and it's part of the modern day world that we're living in. So this goes back to how we actually started this conversation is, how do we learn to navigate life differently in order to create balance in our body, given all the, what's going on in the world around us, in our environment, and to support optimal health, essentially, and so these moments when somebody is diagnosed with thyroid imbalances, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, when they're diagnosed with PCOS, when there's something else that comes to the surface, it's an opportunity to reflect and go within and say, what is disturbing the balance of my body, right? And really doing some detective work to uncover those things.
Yeah, I like how you phrase that. It's like looking at your body in a holistic way, right? And to see really what's going on. Actually, I think, can we back up a little bit? Can we talk a little bit about what the symptoms of hypo and hyperthyroidism are? Because we didn't talk about that, but we just kind of jumped into that. If you could just briefly go over that.
So hypothyroidism is the one that I see that's mostly prevalent, especially in women. And I think even statistically, this is also backed. It is the most prevalent type of thyroid condition out there, which also then can be linked with Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune condition related to the thyroid, basically. So hypothyroidism is when, as to say it plainly, when the thyroid is quote unquote sluggish, essentially. So this means that there's not enough thyroid hormone circulating throughout the body for, as we'll probably get into, various reasons, essentially, right? So the thyroid is this master control center for our metabolism, for, managing our weight, managing our body temperature, managing and controlling the quality of our hair and nails, for example. So as I am saying some of these areas that it, kind of is in control of, this is where we can see a lot of common symptoms, right? Is that it will be weight gain. no matter what you're doing, it's hard to lose weight, or you continue to gain weight, which was part of the experience that I was having, as I just shared, and what most people experience with hypothyroidism as well too, or what we could say weight loss resistance, right? Like you just can't get it off. Also, a lot of people tend to, like, one of the really signature signs is that you're cold all the time, especially when other people aren't, basically. So you always have a tendency to be cold. Brittle hair, brittle nails can also be very common here, that they're breaking, all the time, or your hair is falling out, can be really common in this circumstance as well too. Dry skin, dry eyes. It drives me crazy when I see like the pharmaceutical commercials about dry eye stuff, and I'm like, that is like a thyroid thing.
Yes.
Or even eye health, like changes in your vision quality, right, can also be linked to this as well. Feeling tired all the time, like, right, just feeling sluggish kind of goes along with that sluggish thyroid type of concept, essentially. And a big part of that is because the thyroid function is very strongly linked with our hypothalamus and pituitary and adrenal axis, the HPA axis, and the regulation of cortisol in the body, which regulates our energy throughout the day. A lot of people know cortisol might be related to stress hormone, but cortisol is actually the depiction of our circadian rhythm, our energy rhythm throughout the day. And so those are a lot of, most common things. The last thing I'll say too is like sleep disturbances, like not great quality sleep. So we see some of those like maybe opposite symptoms on the hyperthyroid side. Hyperthyroid is when people have an abundance of thyroid hormone for certain reasons, where people are going to be way more high strung. They're going to be on have a hard time keeping weight on, for example, but they may have some of the other like crossover symptoms as well too. And then Hashimoto's, like I mentioned, is the autoimmune expression related to the thyroid, where the body's attacking thyroid tissue. So when the thyroid tissue is under attack, being damaged, of course, the thyroid is going to struggle to produce thyroid hormone adequately. So that's where we see the two things usually common together, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, right? Although we address them actually somewhat differently, but similarly in a lot of ways. And there's also Graves' disease, which is another type of autoimmunity, which tends to be more on the hyperthyroid side. One of the signature signs of that is like bulging eyes. So we have bulging eyes as a signature sign for Graves' disease type of stuff. So I hope that paints a really good picture for everyone. Left anything out there?
No, you explained it really well. And I think just like for people that may not know, like the terms, like hypo is like under, so it's like underactive thyroid, and hyper is like over, so overactive thyroid, to help remember the difference. But yeah, you explained that really well, and tied in the autoimmune diseases, which is also very helpful. But I think this might go into the next question of like some of the symptoms you described, but they could be related to other things. Like some of the things you described could sound like PCOS, for example. So why do you think that like that being partially the reason that maybe, or like, if somebody has like maybe sleep apnea, like they're not sleeping well, or vitamin deficiencies, right? They could be losing hair and have low energy. And okay, so that's probably one of the reasons why thyroid is overlooked. But what other reasons is it that like thyroid conditions are being overlooked?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest reason is that we need to stop looking at the body in silos, in separation, because the body is a whole network of systems that all interact with each other, that are all dependent on each other. So when one system of the body goes down, it is a domino or a cascade effect. They are all going to be disrupted. And so we really want to look at what is going on across all the systems of the body, and that and understanding that they're all related, right? So if we take a look at something like PCOS, for example, and thyroid, some of those commonalities underlying like the disturbances are going to be blood sugar regulation. It has an impact in both areas. So by working on regulating blood sugar and eating the right foods that are for your body to create that balance, it is going to boost or support, resolving PCOS and balancing the thyroid. Those two things interact together, right? Especially when we look at the realm of PCOS and thyroid, all kind of falls under the endocrine system of the body. So the endocrine system is the system that kind of houses all of our glands that produces hormones, essentially. And I talked about, just a moment ago, the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And guess what? We also have the hypothalamus pituitary ovary axis and hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis. So we've got this main control center up in the brain, the hypothalamus and pituitary. And when that thing is on the fritz because there's all these disturbances coming in, like it can't read the signals correctly, it's going to mess with the outputs to the other glands to produce hormones or be in balance, right? And so this is where I think that it's getting missed, is that oftentimes there's not a holistic approach or not a holistic enough approach. And this is where I like to work with clients different, and maybe you do something similar, is that when I work with somebody, we run a series of lab tests all at the same time to look at the hormone, immune, digestion, detox, and energy and nervous system at the same time. So we can look at the patterns and correlations and not be working in a narrow mind of, oh, we're just going to address this thing over here, because then you're forgetting to address all the other stuff over here that interacts together to create the scenario, right? So you mentioned nutrient deficiencies, for example. Nutrient deficiencies, 100%, are going to affect hair growth and hair loss. Nutrient deficiencies are also going to impact the thyroid's ability to make, thyroid, right? But we got to ask, okay, why are there nutrient deficiencies? What is happening? And so the nutrient deficiencies could be one, poor quality food. That's one piece of the puzzle. Two, if you're eating super healthy like I was, how well can you absorb and assimilate that food? So this is why we have to look at the digestive system. Do we have what we call like leaky gut going on, where nutrients are not being absorbed as adequately as they should be, even though you're eating super healthy and taking supplements, right? And then what's happening with your sleep? Because at night is when our body is doing all of its major repair of the thyroid gland and the ovaries and all the things, and it's detoxing. So if we're not sleeping well through the night, those functions aren't happening at the level that they should be. So what do we need to do to support sleep? Is there something off with your circadian rhythm? Cortisol, your other hormones, right? Is there something that's going on with environmental aspects, disturbances like Wi-Fi, light exposure at nighttime? And so I think this is, again, where it's getting missed, is because we've, our conventional traditional model is very siloed, separate. Like you go to an endocrinologist separately to a gastroenterologist, right? And even I would say sometimes with my clients that come to me that have worked with functional and integrative health practitioners, that there is a gap in the treatment because it's been take this supplement for that instead of take this prescription for that ailment, right?
Right.
There's not necessarily that holistic approach that's coming in, because we can't out supplement a stressful lifestyle, toxins in our environment. Like we have to look at the bigger picture of what is going on.
Thank you for being a dedicated listener and viewer. I'd love your support in reaching more listeners so more women can become empowered about their hormone health, PCOS, and fertility. You can do that by leaving a review or engaging in this video. As a way to say thank you, I'd love to give you a free 45-minute one-to-one consultation. During the consultation, we'll go over your medication, supplements, labs, lifestyle, and address your current challenges to help you get direction and break out of your plateau to support your health goals. All you have to do is on Spotify, make sure you're following the show, click the 3 dots to rate the show and give it 5 stars. On Apple, make sure you are following, scroll down and click ratings and reviews and write a review. Or on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed, have your notifications on, you've liked this video, and left a comment with your thoughts. You only have to do this on one of the platforms that you're currently listening or watching on. Then take a screenshot and email me hello@dramiPharmacist.com. That's HELLO@DRAMIPHARMACIST.com. Now back to the show. Thank you.
No, definitely. Yeah, I try to think of like our hormones in our body like a symphony. Like if one thing is off, it impacts the whole orchestra. And that is like basically how our hormones work, as you very clearly explained how they are all connected, like thyroid, stress, insulin resistance, how all of that insulin hormone is all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned diet in terms of like supporting your body. So if somebody does feel like, they may have a diagnosis of hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, or they think they do, and they want to see how they can get more support naturally. So what are some suggestions you have for that?
Mm-hmm. So the thing is, we can look at diet structures that are out there as a framework, right? To maybe move in the right direction, but ultimately we are all unique individuals, and therefore your diet is going to be unique too. So we can look at something, for example, like paleo, right? Very commonly known diet structure these days. You can go in mostly any grocery store, and you might even find products like even in a Safeway, Ralph's, like some of the major food chains, where now we even see food products that say paleo on them. It's become mainstream, right? But paleo is a framework. It is not individualized for you.
Right.
And, if we look at something like Whole30, paleo, carnivore,
keto,
autoimmune, like AIP diet. Keto actually is a little bit different. So these other diets are what we would put in the category of elimination diet. You are eliminating certain foods. Keto is more of a macronutrient diet. So keto at its core, the concept of keto is you're going to eat less than 20 grams of carbs per day. You're going to eat high fats, moderate proteins, right? And this is where the downfall of keto is for a lot of people. Like they do dirty keto. So they're just, eating inflammatory foods that are like a lot of possible dairy product or high fat foods, And so these are elements of figuring out the right diet for you as a unique individual. What are the foods that you may need to eliminate because they're inflammatory for your body? And also taking a look at what is the macronutrient balance that your body needs. Like what is the balance of protein, carbs, and fats that your body needs? So like in order to help collect insights about this and the work that I do, Dr. Me, is that I do a food sensitivity test to look at like what is the body reacting to that's creating inflammation that we may need to eliminate for a period of time to allow the body to heal, to stifle that inflammatory fire. And then also looking at doing an assessment called metabolic typing, which is looking at the body's metabolism and how does it burn fuel. So does it burn carbohydrates really fast, meaning that we need more protein and fat in the diet to balance that out? And this can be really important for PCOS as we're thinking about balancing blood sugar release in the or does the burn carbohydrates, for example, really slow? So it needs less fat and protein because that'll slow it down even more, essentially, right? And then taking these two concepts to really create something that's individualized for a person. So I'll give an example of how this showed up for me. Like, remember I said I was eating healthy according to the definition of right? So I was eating boneless, skinless chicken breast and broccoli. It was like one of I know you can laugh because this common thing, right? Like this is, as somebody who competed for fitness competitions, like ran marathons, like I was very
Mhm.
like very dedicated to my diet. So, and eating every 2 hours, right? And when I was eating every 2 hours, I was eating like, yogurt and berries, essentially. So through this process, found, I was reactive to some very common inflammatory foods, things like gluten, dairy, soy.
Mhm.
When I was, going through my Hashimoto's thyroid journey, foods that contained lectins that can be problematic during an autoimmune process. And then in addition to that, I also found that my body does best with higher fat and protein and less carbohydrates. When I eat that way,
Mm.
I'm hungry. Like I don't need to eat every 2 hours. My blood sugar is balanced. Everything is great.
Mm.
And even down to the gritty detail of, I do better with dark meat chicken than I do with white meat chicken.
Mm.
So based on my body's unique design,
Right.
chicken thighs are better for me than chicken breast. I get more adequate nutrients out of that. I feel sustained for a longer period of time. My energy is great. I don't have bloating that happens. So this is where, again, and like we can use these diets out there as frameworks to help guide, but we want to really pull that information in and get some data on what's specific to an individual and curate something that's unique for what their unique body needs.
Yeah, no, that's very important and true. I like that. The framework is a great starting place. Like, if you're already feeling like you need to make some improvements, right? Like cut out some processed food, try to eat more like home cooked meals, then that's a great place to start. But yeah, knowing individually what you need to just support your body better so your body can support you.
Exactly. And I love that, right? Like, something like paleo or something like Whole30 gets somebody moving in the right direction. It gives them
Yeah.
structure to like start making lifestyle changes, to develop new habits, to like learn a little bit more about their
Yeah.
body. They'll make progress through that process. And then a lot of the people that I work with specifically, like they've worked within that framework and they've made progress, and yet there's more that they want to experience. Like there's more that they want to heal and resolve. And that's where we can dive deeper into what's actually personal for them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then I know some of the other things you were mentioning earlier, like holistic approach, lifestyle is huge, which is what I talk about as well. But I know you mentioned like the impact of sleep and stress. Is there like any specific recommendations you have around that in terms of like to support thyroid health?
Yes.
Other than trying to get good quality and quantity of sleep and reduce stress? I don't know if there's anything more specific you'd like to say.
Well, let's really emphasize the sleep part, because we really, as a society and a culture, have to learn to value sleep possibly more than diet and exercise sometimes. This is something we need to protect. It is so precious. It is essential to our well-being. And this is where we do see, quite a bit of modern day disruptions that are happening. So if we think about from a historical ancestral perspective, we can also think about this in relationship to animals, is that we are diurnal animals. We are day dwellers. That's who we are. Opposite of a possum, which is nocturnal. They are night dwellers, right? And so we recognize this truth, we can then go, okay, what is our body? What is the natural rhythm of our body? And where do we get the most value out of sleep and the importance of sleep overall, right? And in our modern society, there's a lot of things that, one, keep us up late at night. How many times have the listeners of this podcast stayed up late to complete a deadline, an assignment, a project, a work thing, stayed out late because of obligations, work dinners, or simply because they put the kids to bed and they feel like that's their only time to themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we are staying up late outside of the natural rhythm of our body. In addition to, then we've got the environmental impacts of, we have artificial light. Like when the sun goes down, we still have lights turned on in our house. right?
Yeah.
We also have the ability to dictate temperature. And so temperature and light are two things that help signal the body to shift its hormones throughout the day. You know, a lot of people, we talk about hormones.
Yeah.
We think about sex hormones, like the reproductive hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but cortisol is a hormone, melatonin is a hormone. And these two hormones in particular, along with human growth hormone, are very much dictated by the light and temperature cycles. And it's supposed to be naturally correlated with the sun, essentially. So when the sun rises in the morning, light and temperature increases, which signals the body to release cortisol. It gives you energy to get up and get moving. So if you're sluggish in the morning time, that means your cortisol is likely low. It's not doing its job. And then it peaks after 2 hours after waking. And then throughout the day, it slowly tapers off. And in the evening time, when the sun sets, light and temperature decrease. This is what signals the body to bring cortisol down to its lowest points and to start releasing melatonin and human growth hormone. So if you feel like you got a second wind or you're wired but tired at nighttime, that usually strongly correlates with a disruption in cortisol at nighttime that's keeping you up, basically, right? And Chinese medicine, they have always been ahead of the game because they practice ancient traditional medicine, right? And if people want to see this in a visual component, I would encourage you to Google Chinese medicine body clock. You're going to see all these, images on the internet that look the same, basically. And what it depicts is based on the natural rhythm of the body that is ruled by the sun cycle, when certain organs or functions of the body are supposed to take place in this natural rhythm. So for example, between the hours of 1 and 3 is when the body does its deepest detox work, right? 6 a.m. approximately is when the large intestines do their bowel movement. So you should be getting up with the sun and having a bowel movement, right? We put elements on there as well too. So this goes back to the importance of sleep. So there's a lot of misleading information sometimes around sleep. I mean, it's like, I feel like every other day on social media.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say it's around every subject, but yes.
It's like, they're like, oh, new study came out showing that, people only need 7.25 hours of sleep to feel great, And so, yes, the amount of time that we sleep is important, but almost what is most important or more important is the time frame in which you're sleeping. So because of this rhythm of the body, the critical time for us to be sleeping is in relation to our circadian rhythm, that sun cycle, which is from 10 p.m. to about 4 a.m. How many people do you know are actually asleep by 10 p.m.? That is not the majority of the population, right?
Nope.
And so when we're not asleep by 10 p.m., we're not in the state that our body needs to be in for it to start doing some of these really important things in the middle of the night. Or how many people, especially in the PCOS world, how many people wake up in the middle of the night? How many people are waking up in the middle of the night in the window of 1 to 3, which is disrupting the body's detox process. So we're not fully completing these functions to optimization. And over time, it creates like a backup in the system, right? We're not fully healing in this time. So it is super important. Most important thing is the sleeping window, 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. to about 4 a.m. Sleep till 6. That's fine when the sun rises. I just, I know my husband's one of those. He likes to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So that's why I say 10 to 4, most critical. Yes, you can sleep till 6 or when the sun rises. Think about, you want to be asleep a couple hours after sunset and you want to be waking up with the sun, basically, right? And then the other thing with this is that we want to make sure that we actually are sleeping through the night. We're waking up in the middle of the night, it's disrupting the body's functions and process. So those are the two most important things to focus on. And if we focus on those things, you're automatically going to hit the 7 to 8 hour sleep window. You're automatically going to get the, recommended REM versus deep sleep components, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so that's what we really, and that also is then any food that you're putting in your body, any supplements that you're putting in your body, any detox modalities that you're using as you're working on eliminating toxins,
Yeah.
be able to sleep, like really like sleeping, getting the satisfying sleep like this is going to 10x all of that effort, basically, right? Because we're letting the body do its job at nighttime.
Yeah. And it's like you have to, it's like it starts becoming a negative spiral because everything is building on each other, right? Like if you're not able to sleep, then you're not detoxing, you're not absorbing the nutrition, you're not feeling rested. So then you don't like maybe, disrupts like how well you work out, and everything is all interconnected, as we've been saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like how you explained that with the sleep. And I hope that helps, everyone understand a little bit better, like the importance of it. Because like I've had, clients come up to me as well, and they're like, yeah, like I'm working out, eating well. But I'm like, okay, but you're not even sleeping like more than 6 hours. Like you can do all the other things, but as you said, sleep is so important in the whole picture of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about understanding thyroid health overall. What if it's not really a thyroid problem? Like we talked, it could be a lot of other things. I don't know if there's anything related to that you wanted to touch on.
Well, I would just say that it's never really a thyroid problem.
It's everything, right?
The thyroid might be the thing that you discover, right? The thyroid might be the thing that you discover. But that doesn't mean that it's a thyroid problem. And I think you
Mm,
did something really like important earlier. You made a comment, Dr. Me, of like, we were talking about thyroid problems. Oh, and symptoms. You're like, oh, well, that sounds a lot like PCOS,
mhm.
right? And I think this is where it's like, oh, we found something, we're going to diagnose it, versus asking the curious question of why is that happening? Because a thyroid,
Yeah.
the body wants to be in balance. So it's actually never a thyroid problem.
Mm, I like that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the symptoms are your body telling you that, hey, something is wrong. Like I need you to look at me closely and pay attention and support me because I want to support you.
Yes.
But these symptoms are signs that your body is like, hey, something is not right.
Exactly. Like even if, I just watched not that long ago, there was a documentary series or like show about Chernobyl. Remember
Hmm.
the nuclear plant in, oh my God, I'm totally going to butcher the location, but in Europe, that years ago, like decades ago at this point in time, it blew up basically, and there was a bunch of very toxic, I think it was uranium, that was released into the environment. And please, if you guys are listening to this and know the details, and I'm totally butchering it, I'm sorry. The point is, it's more of an example of toxic elements in the environment. And what's really interesting is my husband remembers, he's from Oregon, and he remembers being a child and that nuclear cloud, that toxic nuclear cloud coming over Oregon. So it
Oh, wow.
rained on a huge part of the world, basically, right? So you could say, you might go, well, that toxic element is highly correlated with thyroid problems. Like in that part of the world, afterwards, there was a lot of cancer, a lot of, just from the exposure of this toxic element, there was a lot of thyroid problems. You could say that, yes, it was a very specific targeted impact on the thyroid, right?
Mm.
Even in that very specific scenario, we also want to recognize that that type of toxic element also would have burdened the detoxification system.
Right.
It would have damaged the intestinal lining and our ability to digest and absorb nutrients. It probably would be classified as an endocrine disrupting type of toxin. It probably impacted all the other hormones of the body as well too,
Mhm.
So we can look at those, what might seem like a very specific impact of the thyroid, but we have to recognize it hit the whole body, right? And so
Yeah.
it's never really just a thyroid problem or just a PCOS problem or just a, when I look at my
Mhm.
skin cancer, what were all the things
Yeah.
to skin cancer? It was everything. It was the perfect combination of toxins trapped in my body, of
Right.
inflammatory foods that I was eating, of blood sugar dysregulation that was happening, hormone imbalances, bacteria in my gut that all
Right.
created an environment for cancer to cultivate itself. And I cleaned all that up and I don't have cancer anymore. And I'm not afraid
Yeah.
to go out in the sun and I don't bathe in sunscreen.
Yeah.
Just give my body what it needs,
No.
balance.
Yeah, it's because like, you've gone through the process of understanding what your body needs and how your body functions.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, this was very, very informative conversation. Was before we wrap up and get into how people can connect with you, was there anything else you wanted to touch on in terms of thyroid health? Which I mean that that was very broad. That could be like another 2-hour conversation. But anything else that you wanted to highlight?
I think that two things that I would highlight and leave the audience with, if they're thinking that, one, if the audience is trying to work on improving thyroid health, if they're currently working with a thyroid imbalance, and two, even if you suspect that this might be a piece of your puzzle, it is good to have the information, right? And these are two gaps that I see, or pitfalls that I see a lot of times within this area. One is being an advocate for yourself and getting a full thyroid panel.
That's a
So
good point. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
yes, you have got to advocate for yourself, because the traditional standard of care is not to run a full thyroid panel. So what do I mean by that? You want to look at, like, what they most often will run is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. If you're lucky, they might add T4 and T3, which are two types of hormones that we see related to the thyroid. And even within T4 and T3, we've got two elements of that, two categories. There's total T4 and there's free T4, the total amount in the body, and then the amount that is free to be utilized by the body. And then T3, we've got total and free as well too. To get the full picture, a full panel also is going to include reverse T3. Like, is the body stopping? Like, are the cells not letting T3 in to be utilized? And then there's T3 uptake, which indicates how much T3 is being taken into the cells, right? And then also looking at thyroid antibodies, TPO and thyroid globulin, to understand if there is an autoimmune scenario at play here, which would just give you more data insights. So I can't tell you, like, how many times I've had clients go and ask for a full thyroid panel, because this is something that they can get done, usually covered by insurance, and be a regular, blood work panel. And a lot of times the practitioner will resist, or the insurance company will deny the claim, the order. So this is why you have to be an advocate for yourself. You have to, strongly endorse asking for it, and be willing to pay out of pocket if it's not going to be fully covered by insurance, so that you can get the data and information. And why is this important? Well, one, if you are dealing with a thyroid condition and you're on thyroid medication, these data points can 100% change your treatment plan with your thyroid medication.
That's true.
And understanding the bigger picture of what's going on with your body. So then that's my next thing that I just want to say. The second thing is that if you are on thyroid medication, you want to take a look at the implications of that potentially. So synthetic thyroid medications, for example, can be bound up with a bunch of fillers, toxic elements, gluten, dairy, inflammatory components, right? It may not be, I've seen clients that are on, T3, synthetic T3, and they're not getting the full thyroid panel, and their thyroid continues to be out of balance. It's because they're getting over medicated with T3. So this is where we need to have that really, like, big picture. And also, again, ask, what all does the thyroid need? Like, why are we only supplementing with one hormone when there's multiple hormones that the thyroid produces? So this is where you can educate and advocate for yourself, is like, get curious and ask about natural thyroid hormone medications like WP thyroid, NP thyroid. This is desiccated thyroid hormone. It's going to have the gamut of the thyroid hormones like T1, T2, T3, T4. So you're getting a more full spectrum support that may be more advantageous for your body. And these natural types of thyroid medications tend to not have the fillers, the inflammatory components to them, right? And also that it is possible, if you're on thyroid medication, it may be possible for you to get off it. When I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's after finding our mold, I took thyroid medication at a very low dose to give my body that bit of support that it needed in that time frame while I worked on cleaning up my environment. And I was off a thyroid medication and in remission for Hashimoto's within 6 months. So
that's awesome.
It's totally possible. It might be totally possible for you to do this if you're willing to make some of the lifestyle changes.
Yes, once you have the right information. And so a full thyroid panel, just to recap, TSH, T3, T4, PPO, reverse T3, and intake, T3 intake, right? Just so that it's like right there. And yeah, I like to think of like medication kind of like crutches. It's just like you can use it temporarily. And then once, like, you know, if you broke your leg and you're on crutches, once the leg heals, you can come off of crutches. And so I think sometimes people may be resistant that, hey, I just want to go like all natural, or I don't want to like never come off of it. But, you know, I think as you emphasize, right, it's understanding how your whole body is connected, related, helping your body, giving the tools it needs to heal, and then continuing with those lifestyle changes.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm really glad you brought that up about the levels. I mean, the lab testing for thyroid. So what is the best way that people can connect with you if they want to learn more about your story, your like more about thyroid health, and just if they want to like learn about the services you offer too?
Hi. Well, I love interacting with people over on Instagram. It's my favorite place to connect with people directly. So you can come over and shoot me a message, chat me, follow me on Instagram at Holistic Health Boss. And holistic is with a W, like whole body, whole person, whole foods, like we're talking about today. So that's a great place to interact. I'm sharing content like this all the time, more educational information. And then I do have a regular newsletter and a website full of a bunch of blogs on these types of topics at holistichealthboss.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll definitely include that in the show notes and in the description. And to everyone, as always, be kind to yourself, be patient, and focus on progress, not perfection. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.